Speropictures podcast, where we focus on the stories and not the headlines.
Because we believe that stories can change the world. Get
ready
because the show starts now.
Hey there, Speropictures crew. Welcome back to Coming Attractions. I'm your host, Joy Thayer.
And I am Mr. Joy, and today we're doing a bit of a review. Not a review like we're talking about something that we talked about before, but like a review of something that we watched.
Mm-hmm. We're reviewing projects so that you guys know what to watch.
Right. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to watch it or don't want to watch it, or if you want to just...
Well, I think this is a good one that both of us agree on, that we both enjoyed for various different reasons.
Well, right, and I like talking about things that you can kind of get into and not just be like, oh, it was good. It's like I like talking about things from the standpoint of why was this good? Why was that bad? What was different? And I felt like this was an interesting example because I feel like there was a difference between season one mm-hmm. and then season two.
So I have a question.
But what show are we talking about?
Well, that's not part of my question. We're talking about the new series called Billy the Kid.
Billy the Kid.
Where can people find it?
You can find it actually Amazon Prime Plus. Like everybody has a plus now, mm-hmm. So they've added on MGM Plus, and so Billy the Kid is actually an MGM original mm-hmm. show. And when we saw it, you were actually pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Well, because I like those kinds of things. I was like, I said I was going to watch it without you, is what I said. And then you were like, wait a second.
Hold on a second. I want to watch that.
Yeah.
It's like, Joy likes to watch stuff that I don't necessarily like to watch. Mm-hmm. Like, she'll watch Sean Hobbs.
Sean Hobbs.
Yeah,
I watched Sean Hobbs without you, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like, whatever. I don't think I've ever actually seen a Fast and the Furious movie.
No.
Out of all of them.
No.
Which they're kind of hard to miss. I mean, you can trip and fall into a Fast and the Furious movie, it feels like, but mm-hmm. there's so many of them now.
But they're such pretty cars.
And they destroy them.
Not all cars got harmed in the making of this film.
But why? But you liked Billy the Kid. You saw Billy the Kid, and you were interested in it. Why? Why Billy the Kid?
Because it's a story I grew up with. It's the legend of Billy the Kid was something that was just so much fun mm-hmm. and interesting, and his story was kind of this anti-hero kind of thing. It was really interesting. But I grew up watching Young Guns, and mm-hmm. I watched Tombstone, and I watched just all of these westerns when I was younger. And then my grandma and my uncle and everybody was a bunch of readers, and I grew up with a bunch of boys, and so I knew all of the different legends. And this was exciting for me because it was talking about his upbringing mm-hmm. rather than what was happening when he was just in his outlaw days. Mm-hmm.
So interestingly enough, I am actually related to Billy the Kid.
Are you really?
I am.
What?
Yes. I think he's like it's one of those second, third cousin, once removed kind of thing. But
I like you so much more now.
I'm cooler now, apparently. But yes, but we share common Irish ancestry, apparently.
Wow.
So because my mother's maiden name is McCartney, mm-hmm. And so Irish roots. And of course, Billy the Kid was, Irish, as this show portrays. And some of the show's portrayal is fictionalized because there are certain things about Billy the Kid. And that's one of the reasons why I think Billy the Kid was such a fascinating kind of Western legend is mm-hmm. because there's a bit of a mystique about him, and you didn't really know where he came from or stuff like that. So they had to fill in some blanks.
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that they actually make a third season because mm-hmm. I felt like they ended this one where it could be a final season, mm-hmm. but they also left some things that were not tied up. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason we know the stories of Billy the Kid is because there was a little pamphleteer guy that mm-hmm. wrote the stories down and created that legend, that mythos of him and some mm-hmm. of the things that were going on. And so the writers, I'm assuming, took some creative liberties off of those little
So the writers are the writers of the Vikings and the Tudors. Michael Hurst is the guy that's writing Billy the Kid. And so the thing that was interesting for me, it was funny. It was funny because we were watching it, and I'm just watching it, and I don't know. Even though I'm related to the guy, I don't know a lot about his story, unfortunately.
Not even my relative, and I know.
And it wasn't like I don't like Westerns. Like I've watched Tombstone and countless Clint Eastwood movies and John Wayne movies, and just like lots of Westerns over the years. But for whatever reason, I do remember watching Young Guns, but I don't remember when that was.
Well, and that was in the 90s.
Well,
late
right,
90s.
but see, that's the thing is that because my parents didn't allow me to watch a bunch of stuff when it came out.
Yeah.
Like I didn't see Goonies until I was like 22 years old.
My parents wouldn't let me watch it either.
And
I just didn't do it when they were home.
It ruined Goonies for me because I watched it when I was 22 years old and I'm like, this isn't really any good. And that has got me thrown out of parties.
And so whenever somebody would say, "Hey you guys! Hey you guys!"
I thought they were quoting the Electric Company.
Hey you guys!
Which is really what they were quoting. I actually was like, oh, why, wow, everybody knows what the Electric Company is.
Ease, cheese.
I'm actually smarter because I know where that reference came from, but
I'll let you have it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But I knew where all
you.
of the references came from in Billy the Kid, and you didn't.
No, right. Yeah, well, you all of a sudden, he comes across a guy in a bar, right? And the guy's sitting there in the corner watching him and stuff like that. And he has a drink and he comes in, it's raining or whatever. And
I knew who he was.
Goes and sits down, and the guy says, right, well, you see, like, you're like, ooh, and I'm like, there's like this anticipation. And I'm like, and all of a sudden he says, oh, my name is Pat Garrett. And you're just like, you're smacking me like, oh, that's Pat Garrett. And I'm like, who's Pat Garrett? And you're like, he's the guy that shot Billy the Kid. And I'm like,
yeah, he's the sheriff.
I didn't know.
But he wasn't always a sheriff.
Right.
That's the really fun and interesting thing is he was a part of the outlaw gang for a bit. And so he was friends with Billy. He knew Billy, and he knew his idiosyncrasies, all that kind of stuff. So, of course, that's going to be who kills him.
Now, some people say, as I was looking and preparing for the show, some people say that the show is slow. Like it's kind of a slow
because
build.
It's slow. I
Right.
said that. I was like, man, this is really good. It's really slow in a lot of parts. I could have watched it on time and a half, especially because I'm ADHD. So I had to write while I was watching.
Well, but I think that's the thing that's as we're in this, because the limited series, a lot of people kind of still refer to it as TV, and it's really not. And so like TV,
it was very cinematic.
Well, but the pacing of it, right? It's like people complain. For example, like I was just talking to Lauren, one of our employees, and she was talking about the Percy Jackson shows, right? The new shows, and she said that there's people that complain that the show is slow, but yet they complain about the movie because the movie had to cut out a bunch of stuff because they couldn't get into it in the books, and that's the thing is that if you want to watch a TV show and a serial that's built for an hour-long worth of TV, that is a completely different thing than a limited series that unpacks a character over the course of 8 episodes in a season and then subsequent seasons.
I think actually,
it's typically going to be a slower build.
If I'm remembering back now, what I thought was slow was the new Lord of the Rings series. That's the one I was complaining about.
That was the one you were
because the
about.
Billy the Kid one.
I don't remember you complaining about
Billy the Kid
now because you usually
now that
do.
I'm talking about it, yeah.
Know what he looks like? They say he dresses kind of funny. Funny? I mean, unusual.
the point of view, the perspective was just awesome because of just where it put you as an audience member. And then the storytelling techniques and components that he was putting in there, and he would actually have some suspense and you didn't know what was going to happen. And usually I'm right, like when it comes to plot holes and all that kind of stuff. And I thought something was going to happen and it didn't. And I was happy that it didn't happen.
Joy mentioned the cinematography. There was a couple of moments where we were just like, both of us were like, wow, that was
That was stunning.
Stunning, like a really beautiful shot. And I think that one of my favorite parts was in I think it was in episode 6, and there was a shootout on a creek bed. This was kind of at the point where Billy is kind of still wrestling, with kind of the moral dilemma that he finds himself in. Is that he finds himself in he was arrested. He shot a guy in self-defense, stuff like that.
He turned himself in.
He turned himself in. And so, and then also he's dealing with some kind of cartel kind of stuff. They don't call it the cartel, but it's like, big business, manipulating judicial systems and justice. And so corruption, right? So because he came over from, Ireland as a boy and with his mom and dad and had this vision of America, he kind of carried that vision of justice.
But he also, I think, for our audience members, we have a large swath of audience members that are Christians. And that's what he was also wrestling with, was the idea of where is God? Where is justice? I believe in goodness. I believe in doing the right thing and all that kind of stuff. And then I think what we see over time is that he's trying to figure out, do I take justice in my own hands? Is that God's righteousness? All that kind of stuff.
So, and I think that there was, but what I think was interesting about that was that the wrestling of that was, to me, apparent in the cinematography of that scene, because in that scene, they're actually stealing horses from somebody who wasn't a good guy, right? So
they're stealing horses from a bad guy.
They're stealing horses from a bad guy, so very Robin Hood-y kind of. And they end up getting into the shootout, and he's standing there about to shoot this guy, and this guy is like kind of caught like kneeling in the water, and he's kind of you could see he's kind of wrestling with whether or not he should shoot this guy.
No need to shoot me again. I'm dying. I'm not gonna shoot you. Why did you have to do it? Why do you have to rob and kill people like me? Can't you speak?
A lot of smoke and haze. And then when he actually makes that decision, shoots him, the shot pulls back, and there's like they actually shot it from the water. And you see him standing on the side over here, and this guy and the horse, but it's kind of like semi-reflective. And to me, it communicated that there was this kind of like dual moment where all of a sudden he is now a reflection of himself in a sense, and what you've seen him wrestling with. So it was like there was a lot kind of there to just enjoy visually. And then there was some other moments that kind of incorporated into the writing, like he's dealing with his stepdad and some of the earlier things, and then his stepdad is this kind of weaselly, kind of snaky kind of guy. And then, at the end of the second episode, Billy the Kid shoots this snake in the tent.
Yeah.
Right. And there was this really great moment where you're like, oh, that's really good writing, where it's like he shoots this snake in the tent and he's looking at the guy who's the snake in the tent, And so, some really fun moments like that. And so I think those kind of really stood out. I think there were several moments like that in season 1 where you and I were like, okay, well done. Good job.
And I think like that, to your point earlier about taking creative liberties and everything, The Snake in the Tent was never a story I've ever heard. And so obviously visually it was talking about this guy is the snake in the tent. And so that's not a common tale or anything, but it was a visual that communicated this information to the audience. And we were all looking at that guy like, yeah, shut your mouth.
It was an interesting way to take where his dad was depressed, and all of a sudden they find themselves in this kind of real butthole of a town in Kansas, and it's just not this picturesque Western, motif.
Did you see those stars up there, Billy? You are just like one of those stars. You can burn so bright. When you're older, you take time to look up at those stars and know that those bright, burning stars up there, they reflect the light. It's in you.
So what was cool about that was that there was a couple of other moments in the first season where you see Billy looking up at the stars, and you didn't have to. If you'd watched the whole the season, you were like, oh, he's thinking about his dad. And there was a couple of moments like that where it felt like there was just this real cohesiveness in the writing, where it was like visually, cinematically, we're using the visuals to remind the audience of his kind of personal dilemma, of being raised one way, but then all of a sudden finding himself acting in a different way.
But I think that also it represents, to me, I think the writers must have some kind of spiritual insight, because I think that also represented, God is out there, and there was this other wrestling that he was dealing with. But speaking of that moment, and having a young Billy the Kid as a child, and then him growing up, they casted that really well.
Yeah,
it was done like so good, because when he grew up, I wasn't like, that isn't it. Looking the mannerism.
Tom Blythe was I felt like a good choice. Some people felt like he was like kind of underplaying it a little bit, but I feel like, to me, he captured that kind of tortured existence that they're trying to capture, that he lived in.
Yeah.
But and then the other thing that was interesting was the first season had such a strong point of view from Billy. I mean, I think he was in every single...
Yeah, you pointed that out when we were watching it.
He was in every single scene. And it just kind of was always, what's Billy experiencing in this moment? Very few scenes didn't have him in it. Even when he was younger or when he was older.
I think what that does to an audience member, though, it builds the compassion for some of the choices he made. Because would you make the same choices? Had you gone through that, would you do these same things?
Right.
And so when you go into that character arc, and now he's wrestling with some of these decisions, and he's going through all of that, you want him to stay true to his heart, to his soft, kind, compassionate heart, but he's also very courageous.
Right.
He's very brave. He's a protector. That's who he is as a man. And so as we see him making some not so great decisions, you kind of empathize with him of like, oh, I totally would have done that. I probably would have done it sooner. I would have done something else and even worse. Or, oh man, I wouldn't have done that at all. Like you start wrestling with it yourself as an audience member. And I think that that's what that first person perspective did throughout the entire season of season 1. But now season 2, we're getting into some other things as well.
Well, and also before we get off of season 1 in this particular, but I think that one of the things that was interesting was like kind of like what you talked about, like you mentioned him being a legend. And I think when I'm watching the show, what I'm seeing is visuals that are lending to that kind of mythos.
Yeah.
Where it was like it made him look larger than life or bigger, or kind of almost Greek mythology kind of feel to it, right?
Right.
And even some of the ways that they did some of the color treatments on the sides of the camera on the lenses, where like there's kind of like this softness, you know, over on the edges, and so it kind of felt a little dreamlike in certain instances that that were not connected to like a, you know, a daydream or a nightmare or anything like that. It was just, you know, him, you know, galloping through the field, you know. But it captured this kind of, to me, what I would see in a fantasy film. You know, I don't know. Did you see some of that?
Yeah. I think that's where the director or the writers or the producers or whoever was making those decisions was trying to put you in his headspace. And so if you're in a scene and you have no way for him to, like, unless you're using a narrator and going, I was thinking about this,
Right.
you give a scene and you are also now thinking about what he would be thinking about.
Right.
You've already been in that first person position, and now you're going, oh, what would I do? Where am I going? What's going to happen when I get there? And, you know, that kind of stuff. So I think that they did such a great job with that.
They did. And so what was interesting, though, was that at the end of the first season, I think I noticed it primarily in the 8th episode of that season, was there was this shift that began to happen where it went from a very strong singular point of view to more of, you know, what would be like a third person or like a god-like point of view, where you saw some of the raids that were happening without Billy, and things like that, which, you know, is important because it's like, well, you know, Jesse and his gang go out and, you know, do some raids that Billy didn't want to be a part of because it rubbed him the wrong way morally.
Right.
But it started to shift a bit to this other point of view. And then when it started the second season just felt really different to me. And I think that that's the thing about binge watching a series, is like you watch, you know, over the course of a couple of days, you watch, you know, 8 hours worth of
I don't think we did it in a couple of days, but
TV. Well, but I mean, you watch, you know, 8 hours worth of a story, and then boom, you go into the second season, and there was just a real sharp break that I witnessed very seldomly. I've seen it a couple of times. Like we talked about, The Man in the High Castle had this kind of between season 2 and 3. There was this shift in the writing.
It was really bad.
It was really bad. But like something like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, right? Even Better Call Saul, which had some difficulties because I think there was a strike or something that ended up kind of pushing that off a little bit. And so, but there was this cohesion through, like if you sat down and watched all 6 seasons of Better Call Saul, you know, like you're not feeling like there's a speed bump.
But
there.
I wish this is where we could talk to the director. And if you want to, you can get a hold of us. We'd love to talk to you. Or the writer, or both, or whatever. Or the showrunner, whoever is in charge of making some of these decisions, because I want to know, is it because they want to change you from being in Billy's shoes to now being a judge? You're judging the actions of Billy, you're judging the actions of Jesse, you're judging the actions of Pat. You know, when Pat finds out that he's coming to town, he knows why they're hiring him to come to town. You know, and that there's something there. If you can go from being friends with somebody, I'm willing to hunt them down. And so I'm wondering if they were artistically trying to show some of those things, or was there just a massive shift in the writer's room or the direction or whatever. So I don't know the what's and the whys and the how comes that.
Yeah, I don't
changed.
I don't know. But there definitely was a shift, and I've looked at IMDb and I've tried to find, you know,
Matt didn't like the shift a lot.
No, I didn't like the shift a lot.
Because one of the things that shifted.
Well, hold on a second. So before we bring that up, one of the things that shifted for me was the writing felt like it went downhill. There was this scene. Okay, well, for one thing, there was an actor shift. So they brought in a guy,
Mr. Tunstall.
At the end of episode 8, and he's the guy that, you know, there's 2 shop owners in town, and you know they've hired guns, and
he's the good shop owner.
He's the good guy, and he's British, and they had Linus Roche. He's been in other. recognizable face. But he came in and to play this character in the season 2. And I didn't like the casting choice on him. I felt like the first one felt much more natural to me. It felt like this guy came in and just how it is.
Very different mannerisms.
Very
so
different
your
mannerisms.
expectations of what the guy is supposed to
Right.
look like, sound like, be like, has already been put out there.
Right.
And now you're going, wait a second, that's not congruent.
It wasn't nearly as bad as like Richard Harris playing Dumbledore, and then the other, I can't remember his name, that played the new Dumbledore, but it was like this kind of shift, and you're like, whoa, okay, wait.
Yeah.
I have to get used to this. And I ended up liking the second Dumbledore way better. But
or Last Man Standing, they switched daughters a couple of
Last
times.
Man Standing, they switched daughters a couple times.
It's like, whoa.
Yeah. But anyway, so there was a shift there. But then also the writing, like I said, went downhill because there was this scene in season 2, episode 3. And the Mr. Tunzel, walks in, he's, wrestling with stuff, and he walks in and he kind of goes into the parlor, and Billy the Kid is sitting in the kitchen with some friends, and they're playing a game or cards or something. And he walks in and he starts having this very expositional conversation with Mr. Tunstall. And, and in the moment,
Matt hates expositional conversations.
It's necessary, and it can be done well. It's not like it, it's not like you can't have expositional dialogue. It was just, this one felt really on the nose and very just stilted. And like Billy the Kid basically almost saying like, well, then what happened? And you're just like, oh God, it was really bad.
He breathes like that when we're in bed watching these kinds of things too.
It's like, ugh. So I don't know what was the deal with the writing and where it shifted. And then also, like we were talking about, the point of view shifted and the actor shifting. But then you were going to bring up something that I also point out.
Yeah.
And
so they did the intro during season 2, and Matt got done watching it. He pushed pause on the TV so he could do an exposition of how much he hated this thing, and why did they change that, and they shouldn't have done this, and it was so good, and they wanted to, whose idea was this? And he went on probably just as long as the show.
No, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it may have. Well, I have to apologize for my wife, because probably my rants that are probably 3 minutes do feel like half an hour sometimes, probably.
You know what? Just for our audience, I'm going to just time the rants from now on. Be like, his rant last night was 15 minutes, 38 seconds.
So the graphic treatment on the first season, I love really strong, confident graphics. And I feel like when you understate graphics properly, it actually adds an epicness to the film. So like, Gladiator had that kind of just, I don't need to impress you. I'm just, here's my epic title done, and so Billy the Kid, when he, in this first season, it's like, it shows, white on black on graphics, MGM original, and then all of a sudden you see Billy the Kid riding up some hills, and it just says Billy the Kid, and they kind of did it to where it's like his figure kind of cuts out of the D, and it's just done. Very understated, very simple, very similar to Breaking Bad, because Breaking Bad has a really great opening title card. Like it doesn't need anything other than Breaking Bad. Dun dun dun! That great little, was it a bass? It's not even a bass line.
You know what else has an understated title card?
What?
A Matthew Thayer film called State of Denial.
It does. And Vince Gilligan created it, and then done. You're out. And that's what this reminded me of. It was just very understated, and it felt like, again, it lent to that mythos. We're going to watch something that's grand, that's operatic, it's big. We don't need to sell you on it. that is kitschy as all get out. I have no idea who thought that would be a better idea than what we previously just showed you, because it is so different. It sets the tone for the entire show differently. It feels like they're trying too hard to sell me on like, this is going to be some cool Western kind of thing. And I'm like, I was already bought in. Like I liked it. I didn't, and I feel like it really devalued the show for me. And I don't think that people, I know I go off on graphics a lot, but they are important.
I just want to make a point. Your rant right now is longer than 3 minutes so far.
They are important. Graphics are important. And so, I pay attention to that kind of stuff. It does. It helps. Everything sets a mood. The music, the graphics, the acting, the cinematography, all of the stuff. A filmmaker has all of these tools with which to use to tell the story and to set the tone and to create the expectation in the mind of the audience. And to me, like if they had started out with that in the second season, that graphics treatment in the second season, if they had started out with that, okay, I would have probably been fine with it. But the fact that it was such a shift from the first to the second season, that bugged me. Because I'm like, why are you trying to oversell this to me? What's going on here? So I don't. So those kind of questions, like you said, like those knowing how films are made and having done films and been part of these kind of conversations,
we're big question askers.
I'm always interested, and I love it when I get to meet like somebody like Brad Cummings, right? And I was and he produced The Shack, and I was a big fan of the book, and there were certain parts of the movie that were a letdown for me. I was able to go, hey, Brad. Yeah. Like, we sat down and had great conversations about it, and he was able to fill me in with all of the things that happened, and I'm like, that totally makes sense. I completely understand why certain things weren't done, because Brad wasn't happy about the way that certain things were done. But, filmmaking, it's a team sport. There's a lot of compromises. Things happen.
Yeah, sometimes people fumble.
Well, and sometimes, somebody with more clout comes in and starts pushing their weight around, and you don't really have anything to do. You can't do anything because they're signing your paychecks. So, what are you going to do?
Gain more financial weight.
Right, exactly. So, but we are interested in seeing what happens in episode 2 and how they finish it out. I don't know.
In episode 2?
Not episode 2, season 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because it's still a great show. I enjoy it. It just feels a lot more like a, your standard Western drama to me now. But I don't know. But I still want to watch the rest of it.
Okay. Anyway, we would love for you to watch it. Tell us your favorite Westerns, your favorite genre of films. What do you like? Why do you like it? Again, I think this was a fun one for us because we both enjoyed it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of stuff that we both enjoy, but typically it is that we come at it from different angles of what we like about it. And
and we typically have these kinds of conversations over like a margarita or something. And so we just decided, hey, well, maybe somebody would want to actually listen to us have this conversation. But if there's something that you would like to know what our opinion is on, or a series or a movie, leave a suggestion in the comments. And if we haven't watched it, maybe we will. And if we have maybe watched it, maybe we will do a podcast about it.
Maybe. I think one of the things I wanted to bring up before we go is some of the parallels that are happening in society back then and that are happening now. Is you still have people that are corrupt. You still have people that you don't know if they're a good guy or a bad guy, or they're wrestling with different things or whatever.
Oh, that's not happening at all right
Never.
now.
And then, we've talked about how storytelling can set the world right. And so how people can use it to actually bring some kind of hope, life, redemption, that we can wrestle with some of these things without actually having to live it ourselves as well. And so I think that they did a really great job of telling the story. I'm looking forward to watching the second. And I agree. I love your rants too, because I learned so much, and you'll point out stuff. We have these conversations, and then all of a sudden you're off on this tangent. I wouldn't even have noticed, to be honest. I would not have noticed because I skipped the intros. So I'm just like, I watch the intro once to see how they are. And then I'm like, skip intro, skip
Yeah.
intro, skip intro. And you're like, oh, I need to watch the intro. And then all of a sudden you were off on this tangent. And I was like, that's fascinating.
Well,
I never thought of that.
Well, think about, like, for example, like Stranger Things. What would Stranger Things be without that intro?
Or Star Wars.
Or Star Wars, right?
You know.
It's like there's just
So I do. I
right intro.
enjoy these
Yeah,
conversations because I learn stuff. And then also, how are we going to apply it to the stories that we tell? You know, you did in The State of Denial. You've got a great intro. I like it. And again, I'm not just saying that because you're my husband. I'm very picky.
you
And
are.
So,
No, she tells me my stuff sucks all the time.
don't say your stuff sucks.
No,
I said,
you do.
I'd say
Actually,
it can be
you're
better.
like, it sucks. It could be better. Go back, do it again.
Do it again.
Okay. But usually, I actually already know it sucks, and then she
I have
just,
good taste.
Yeah, she just compounds on the woe that I'm already feeling about.
It comes out. It comes out better.
It does. It does come out better, and she gives me actually most of my best ideas. So she.
I
will
helped
say, well,
the trailer.
Want to do this? You did on that. No, the trailer was just feeling like a mess, and you came in and helped rearrange some of the dialogue and the way that the story was presented. It flowed much better, and that's why we're a good team.
We're a great team.
We're a good team. So,
All right. Well, thank
So-
you for spending some time with us. We got some great podcasts coming up
yep.
this year.
So you should like and subscribe to our show. You can do it here on Rumble. If you're watching it here on Rumble, there's also, we're in podcasty places.
Yeah, we're on YouTube.
We're on YouTube.
You can find us on all the social medias,
Yep.
podcasty places,
On
all that
Twix.
kind of stuff. Twix.
Yep.
Is that your Twitter X is Twix?
It's Twix. That's what I'm calling it now. It's Twix. Twix me.
Gonna let Elon know.
Yeah,
your thoughts there.
Elon, you missed it.
All right. We will see you guys next week. God bless.
See you later.